First up, though, the Brexit bill vote in the House of Lords yesterday as well put the cat among the pigeons for many after peers voted by 348 to 225 in favour of a plan requiring ministers to report on steps to negotiate a continued union with the EU. Now, is that significant? Is that important? A majority of 123, of course, included 24 Conservative peers who voted against the government on the issue, including former ministers Lord Heseltine, Lord Patten, Lord Lansley and Lord Willett. However, it has been seen as significant in that unelected peers in the House of Lords have voted against a measure in a elected government's decision from the elected House of Commons on a vote on an issue that was voted on by the British people in the EU referendum of 2016. Is this unelected peers trying to thwart the will of the people? Even though on this particular amendment there isn't going to be an issue with the government, so we say sidestepping this issue. But let's talk about this with two leading lights from the Remain and Leave campaigns. In just a moment, we'll talk to Iain Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, of course, and Eurosceptic. First up, though, the Labour peer, keen Remainer. I would like to call him always by his correct title, Remainer-in-Chief, Lord Andrew Adonis. Good morning to you, Lord Adonis.
Julia, good morning, and it's a great day to be a Remainer now that the sunlit uplands of the European Customs Union and the protection of our trade now appears to be in prospect. And it's a beautiful spring morning, so the two clearly go together.
And of course, we've got a beautiful sunny day, as you say, and that's despite Brexit.
Degrees.
It's despite Brexit.
Have you noticed, Julia, the temperature shot up when the House of Lords voted for the European Customs Union?
Do you know what? I would love that was a joke from you. I have an horrible feeling you might believe it.
I always said Brexit was being caused by bad weather.
Now, look, let's get to
the
serious stuff, because there are a lot of people who are very, very, very angry, people who voted to leave and people who voted to remain but accept the outcome of that referendum in June 2016, who feel that the unelected peers in your lovely ermine capes, although I know you don't wear them in a day-to-day business, are trying to...
Every day. I'm wearing it at the moment,
Are trying to, sitting at home in your ermine cape, trying to undermine the will of the British people. We all know that leaving the EU meant leaving the single market and leaving the customs union.
We're not undermining the will of the elected representatives of the people at all, because what happens now is that our proposal, which is that the government should negotiate a continued European Customs Union now goes back to the House of Commons. And the reason why the majority was so large in the House of Lords yesterday is a lot of Conservatives voted for it because they want their colleagues, Conservative MPs, including Iain Duncan-Smith, who you've got coming on soon, to consider this issue seriously and then make up their own minds. And
well, they have. Hold on a minute. They have made up their own minds, and they have considered it seriously. We've talked about nothing else for 2 years.
No, they haven't voted on this proposal. And the way that Parliament works, because we are a parliamentary democracy, is that the House of Lords is a revising chamber, and it makes suggestions to the House of Commons as to how things can be improved. And what will now happen is that the proposal that we've made, which is that the government should, as part of Brexit, it doesn't cut across Brexit, but as part of Brexit, it should negotiate a continued customs union. Because remember, there are a lot of countries that are in the European Customs Union that aren't in the European Union itself. That as part of Brexit, that should happen. That proposal now goes back to the House of Commons. Now, the reason, of course, the government is so agitated is because it doesn't have a majority in the House of Commons. And Iain Duncan-Smith, who will no doubt rant and rave to you in a few minutes, what he's really worried about is that there are 15 to 20 of his Conservative colleagues in the House of Commons, the elected House, who may well back what the Lords voted for yesterday. And if they do so, there'll be a majority in the Commons for it. And then, of course, the government's got to do that because it's the Commons that's supreme.
Let me put this to you, because one of the sort of leading statements yesterday was from the former EU Commissioner himself, Lord Patten, a former chair of the Conservative Party. He said there are times in one's political career where what is alleged to be party loyalty comes way behind trying to stand up for the national interest. But this is part of the problem. I think one of the things that I think the British people, the 52% who voted leave, are concerned about is this idea that the establishment, that the great and the good, that those who are permanent secretaries and cabinet secretaries and MPs and ministers, that they know better than the British people, and that for our own good they're going to defeat the will of the British people. And that's a very patronising attitude.
Well, I think that's essentially a matter for the House of Commons, because what will happen now, and we are a parliamentary democracy, is that the Commons will need to decide what it's going to do in response to this. I would just make 2 points, though. The first is that you can be you can do Brexit, you can leave the European Union, but you can still be in a customs union. That a customs union is a question of whether or not you're going to not have import tariffs and customs controls. And as I say, there are a lot of countries that are in the European Customs Union as a matter of their free democratic decisions of their parliaments, who aren't in the Council of Ministers, the European Parliament, and the institutions of the European Union. And the debate, because this is, it goes to the heart of our trade and our prosperity, the debate in the House of Commons is whether it is essential to leave the European Customs Union in order to leave the European Union. Now, people like Iain Duncan Smith, who don't like anything with the word Europe in the title and want to get out of the lot, they will tell you that it's essential that you leave the European Customs Union as well as the European Union. But in fact, it's not essential.
Okay.
This is a judgment call,
Lord Adonis,
and my judgment is that the right thing is for us to stay in the European Customs Union.
Why don't we see what Iain Duncan Smith is going to actually say himself? I'd be very grateful, Lord Adonis, if you could stay on the line, and we'll try to come back to you. But Iain Duncan Smith, of course, a former Conservative Party leader, MP, and leading Eurosceptic campaign. Iain Duncan Smith, we've heard a lot from Lord Adonis about what you're going to say to us. What do you make, in your own words, of this Lord's defeat on the EU withdrawal bill motion?
I have just listened to the most patronising drivel that I think I've ever heard on the radio, and also listening to the debate the other night was really patronising as well. One after another of Lord Adonis's colleagues and friends got up to patronise the British people, telling them that essentially they didn't really know what they were voting for. It was absolutely clear throughout the whole of the debate during the Brexit referendum. Remember, the Prime Minister made it clear, Tony Blair made it clear, the Chancellor of the Exchequer made it clear, just about everybody in the Remain camp made it clear, thinking it was a threat, that if you voted to leave when the Brexit vote came up, it would mean leaving the single market and leaving the customs union. Now, Lord Kerr and others, far too grand and far too important for the rest of the British public, tell them they didn't really have a clue what they were voting about. This vote last night by the Lords was, in essence, a deliberate attempt, as Lord Forsyth made clear. It's not really about the customs union. It's about trying to scupper the whole Brexit process and make it completely unwieldy.
And that's the concern that a lot of people have, that there is this sort of underlying plan. And we know that many of the people who voted, like Lord Patton, Lord Hasseltine, there have been long-standing Remain campaigners and supporters and continue to be so. But this is the issue. Does voting for remaining in I keep using this word A rather than the A customs union, does that mean we wouldn't have left the EU, or does a customs union automatically mean the customs union and automatically mean effectively we're still part of the EU because we can't actually make our own trade deals?
Being a member of the customs union and being outside officially the EU is literally the worst of all worlds, because what you're bound to is you're bound to a process where the tariffs of pretty much every product are set without your say-so. So Turkey, for example, quite recently has said, for God's sake, don't do what we've done because it's a disaster for us. And the reality would be that, there's a very good example, products that we don't even produce in the UK, agricultural products, etc., let's say oranges, tariffs that will be set for those will be set for the producers of the oranges, not for the consumers. They're far more expensive than they would be if we were on the open market. The key point about leaving was ultimately that you leave, you set your own trade arrangements with other countries, and those trade deals being set by the UK will contain within them a much better proposal for financial services. It's interesting to look at almost every deal that the European Union has done, and they haven't done that many, let me tell you, with other countries. They are literally only about 50 to 60% contain any financial services arrangements or services generally, whereas deals done by countries outside the European Union contain nearly 90%.
And that's obviously a huge part of our economy.
The UK much more dramatically than it does the other countries of Europe. So it's better for us outside. We get on with Europe, we trade with them, we have a trade arrangement. This is deliberately attempted to coach and horses through that.
Thank you, Iain Duncan Smith. Thank you. Lord Andrew Adonis. Now, Iain Duncan Smith's accused you of patronising drivel. One thing I want to put to you, Adonis, is why do we think that Leave voters uniquely were just not given full information, didn't know what they were voting for, but we seem to think that Remain voters did know what they were voting for?
Well, I haven't said that. what Iain Duncan did was just to issue a series of insults, which doesn't engage with the argument at all.
To be fair, given the language you used about him in advance, I think it was pretty mild.
I said what he would say in terms of the arguments. What he said what we were being was patronising. We weren't patronising at all. We were addressing the arguments. Now, on this point about people knew that they were leaving the customs union and the single market, that is straightforwardly untrue. Boris Johnson, who was the leading light in the Leave campaign, said that we could stay in the single market and the customs union. Indeed, he said that the day after the vote as well. There was no single document which set out what the Leave case was. Indeed, there were different Leave campaigns which were saying different things.
Well, no. There was an official Remain campaign and there was an official Leave campaign. And the heads of the Leave campaign said en masse that we would be leaving the single union, single market and the customs union.
That, I'm afraid, Julia, is straightforwardly untrue.
Boris Johnson said on a couple of occasions we could stay in the single market, yes.
Yeah, he did. And he also said we could stay in the customs union as well. So
I'm not sure Boris Johnson does detail, to be fair.
He did not.
That point is straightforwardly
Lord Adonis, let me come back to Iain Duncan Smith. Final say. What you're saying, Boris Johnson, I think he did say it, did he not, Iain?
Well, Boris has come out very clearly and said throughout he aligned himself totally with the Leave campaign. And it's no good Lord Adonis playing and dancing on the pin here. The truth is that Lord Kerr yesterday was very clear. He literally patronised the British people and told them that essentially they didn't know what they were voting about. And what's also interesting, I've also heard a number of members of the House of Lords, one of them, I think it was Lord Kerr, I may be wrong on this, it was one of them certainly, who said that they needed essentially to be brought back into line. In other words, the establishment, people like Lord Adonis, who've done very well out of their associations with the European Union, simply really do believe that the British people are too stupid to be able to make a decision like this. I don't know why unelected people think that they know more than the British public do. It really
I'm going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. We're over time. That's Iain Duncan Smith just speaking there, former Conservative Party leader MP, and Labour peer Lord Andrew Adonis. I'm sorry we can't talk for longer.